Good morning. Welcome to Mental Fortress Mondays. Sit for a moment. I'm going to say a few sentences, and I want you to check in with yourself and notice how you're feeling, what your body feels like just right now. And then when I say these things, I want you to notice which one feels the most true to you. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. I am safe. I feel unsafe. My body feels like there's a level of uncomfortableness, or maybe even danger. I feel like I'm really aware and vigilant. I feel a serious threat. Feel free to open your eyes. Welcome to Mental Fortress Mondays. I'm Dr. Cheryl Kurthouse, naturopathic doctor. Today we're going to explore the framework of understanding of our parasympathetic nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system through Dr. Stephen Porges' Polyvagal Theory. We'll try not to get too sciencey, but there's some interesting aspects of how it connects to our nervous system, and I really wanted to share those with you. We'll explore the states of feeling safe, of levels of danger and stress and burnout, and then this feeling of a serious threat as well. It's often associated with a life-threatening situation, abuse, or other traumatic situations. This is Mental Fortress Mondays, where we are going to explore all the who, what, where, when, why, how of mindfulness and everything that it can do for you. In Nova Scotia here, we're fairly lucky. We're opening up after the pandemic, and there's still lots of other places in the world where there's quite a bit of stress of ongoing trying to negotiate what these relationships look like, and I think that's still even true for us here. Lots of people still having double roles with families and trying to work from home, and that can be a huge stress on our systems, especially being this chronic ongoing. And so all of the things that we explore here on Mental Fortress Mondays is to provide a space where we can practice what we can really use to be resilient through stress and then to come out of it on the other side just a little better than we were originally. We have natural tendencies that help us to effectively deal with situations and help us cope in stressful situations. Our reaction to any situation is to navigate through the best that we can. That sounds obvious. In day-to-day life, we behave in certain ways. Some ways we are more aware of and we might feel grounded. In those situations, we have choice in our actions and words and behaviors. And in other situations, we tend to be more reactive. And in other situations, when we become even more stressed, there's this primal survival reaction that kind of takes over, and we actually lose this control to guide and direct and choose our behavior and our words to some degree, and sometimes to an extreme degree. Polyvagal theory, described by Dr. Stephen Porges, details 3 different levels of how our brain and our nervous system function based on our levels of stress, or what he calls our levels of arousal. Now, these 3 different parts are part of our nervous system, and they engage then depending on that level of arousal or stress. It's interesting that the theory also reflects really similarly the 3 different stages of our window of tolerance that we've explored. In that model, we're engaged and grounded and have maximum choice over our own behavior when we're within our limits of the window of tolerance. And we have the model here, so we'll describe it as I can show it to you. So say this is our window of tolerance. When we're in this space, this is where we have the most choice. We can function at will. Everything seems as it should be. And when we get either above or below our window, that would be outside, we hit into these other stages. When we're above our window of tolerance, we can be hyper aroused or over aroused, and this describes feelings of anxiety, of jitteriness. This is our fight or flight state. And when we go under our window of tolerance, which actually is where we typically tend to be even more stressed, even more aroused than when we can act, we freeze, we go numb, or we zone out. In the Polyvagal Theory, it helps us to understand how the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems are engaged at these different levels. Dr. Porges' theory is based also in the connection that develops between the muscles of our body and our nervous system and our organs. So because of this connection, this is the reason why this theory is so interesting to me. It allows us to tap into these systems through manipulating, through moving, through massaging muscles and fascia and other tissues around the body. The key is that it is this avenue into which we can influence the system. So we want to understand how the nervous system functions so that when we're really stressed out, when it starts to break down, we start to get different symptoms, we first recognize it, so that's sort of an assessment or a test of some sort, and then two, we can do something about it. This essentially means that from a perspective, we're trying to treat the root cause of something that is going on, even if it's stress and burnout. And that could be, yes, the situation happening, maybe we have control over it or not, but it can also be our internal aspect or our physical aspects that have a huge influence on how we're coping and how we're dealing. And as a naturopathic doctor, this is always my approach of really wanting to understand that root cause of all of the different pieces that are contributing to it. What is causing the disturbance? And from each angle, those outside things, how are we coping there? What are our internal things? And are there levels of stress or tension, something in our body that are actually keeping us in this state of hyper or hypo arousal where we tend to have these very quick reactions and deal maybe just a little bit less functionally as we could? As it is related to burnout, this means again that we can help our bodies to relax. We can help to relax our nervous system through manipulating the body tissues or assessing them. And then we can change something about our organs, such as changing the way that we breathe that influences the stretch in our lungs that then provides this signal to our brain to help us relax. So these are why we do all of these different things for our mental resilience. Dr. Porges describes 3 different states. It kind of works like a hierarchy of needs. So when we're safe, we have all of the basic needs. We're engaged with one of these symptoms, and that would be also equivalent to inside our window of tolerance. As our states of stress increase, to these more advanced systems go offline, and some of these we've explored in a little bit of detail over the last couple weeks as well. And our primitive systems start to engage when we're really stressed. So here are the 3 stages. So 1, I am safe. If this resonated with you, you may be more in this state, inside this window of tolerance. Here, we're able to be grounded, to be present in the moment. We're functioning at a stage called social engagement, written here in green. This is where we are, again, in our window of tolerance. Our nervous system is functioning optimally. It's a state of the parasympathetic nervous system, where all of the branches of the vagal nerve are balanced and are optimized. When the state is not imbalanced, we would investigate the ventral vagal branch of the vagus nerve. It might be overactive or stuck in a particular way or being engaged in a particular way. In this space, we engage with people easily, and we actually notice when people are in this state. Say you're talking to a friend or a person on the street, and they seem, to have a wonderful expression on their face. They look friendly, their complexion is good, they have blood flow to their face, so they're not ghost white or anything like that. This is because the muscles of our face and the blood flow to our brain that optimize how people engage are actually controlled when we are in this state by our nervous system. These are engagement behaviors aren't learned, but rather they're a response to an assessment of a situation that we deem is safe. Our nervous system, again, is balanced in this state, and we have blood flow to our muscles and to our body and to our brain. It is easy for us to relate to others when we are in this state and to connect with them. We have more empathy. Our defensive responses are also lowered here. In this state, our physiology is calm and balanced, so our breathing, our heart rate. We can engage in digestion when we need to, and then that movement or motility of our intestinal tract, the muscles actually do this in our intestinal tract, and it actually helps that function to occur, and we have great poops. So another reason why we want to investigate all of these different aspects of people when they might not be in a fantastic state, or they might be a little bit more stressed, I actually want to understand how their bowels are moving, because it can give us some insight into what the nervous system is doing and what state we're actually really in and where that nervous system is functioning. Is that parasympathetic, that ventral vagal branch online? Our immune system response is also top-notch when we're here because stress isn't suppressing it. And we can engage in this rest and rejuvenation space. Here we can more easily experience joy. We can be in the present moment. We feel groundedness. We can be curious and open and compassionate and full of mindfulness as well. And then we move to stage 2. And this is also our fight or flight response. Our physiology, such as our heart rate, our blood pressure, our breathing, they change. And in this state, we're ready for action of some sort, either to fight or run away. Our emotions that we experience include worry, concern, anxiety, fear, panic, rage, anger, even just irritation or being frustrated. It doesn't have to be such an extreme, but this is where we start to feel stress and some of our things start to come offline. When we're experiencing this hyper or over-aroused state, we're outside our window of tolerance. This is where I believe that we find ourselves on a daily basis with this chronic stress that people often experience. We might experience worry or these knots in our stomach as we're thinking about work that is stressing us out, or a relationship that's stressing us out, or maybe even just this never-ending list of to-do things that we have to get done. We're juggling our busy lives and we feel this pressure in, again, relationships. Maybe they are with work people or maybe personal, and our sympathetic nervous system engages in this sort of danger state. Now, it doesn't have to feel like danger, but it could be any of those emotions that I described. And in this state, we can still take action. So this is where we're really engaged. Again, that blood flow is going to different spaces. In this state, we're still thinking, I can engage, I can take some action. This is uncomfortable and I don't like it, but there's some sort of reaction from the body, even if it's a little bit more reactive. And then we move to stage 3, down here. Stage 3 is the freeze state. In this state, we're thinking, this is a life-threatening situation without escape. The primitive part of our brain is all about survival. And this takes over when we have a significant stress. Other parts of our nervous system and brain actually go offline. We have physically less blood flow to them, and we can't think in the same way. Some of these ideas we explored last week. In this stage, another aspect of the parasympathetic nervous system is actually engaged. So there's two that we have our parasympathetic nervous system engaged. When we have social engagement and we're within our window of tolerance, and then when we're extreme in this life-threatening situation, or when something like that is triggered and we're in this freeze state. In this stage, the dorsal ventral branch of the vagus nerve is responsible. Trauma at any level, so physical, psychological, or emotional, really encourage this state to be activated. The system engages. Some of us may never experience this, however, many of us do. It is an extreme state where many people experience this through abuse or even through bullying and physical trauma. And as I've seen with patients, I argue that even with chronic pain and chronic illness, we can start to find ourselves in this state. Pulling from a number of different resources, we find that we're in this state when there's a sense of helplessness. There's a physical state of not being able to change the situation, of actually being stuck. We don't want to be here. We know it's not safe for us, and yet we feel like we can't do anything to change it or prevent it. And this is definitely true when some of those situations I described above are prolonged and they happen repeatedly, or they're so significant that it really puts you in this state where you're trapped. A true thought in this state is, I can't. You can't do anything. Maybe you can't physically move. You can't physically escape from whatever this threat is. A typical reaction in this state is to freeze. People dissociate. We separate our mental engagement from our body and from this awareness that we have. We experience numbness, shame, shutdown, hopelessness, feeling trapped, helplessness, or depression, and we can physically become immobile. Our body responds with increases in endorphins that help to mute pain and actually raise our pain threshold as well. We decrease our heart rate and our blood pressure and our muscle tone as well, kind of becoming a little bit more floppy. Our eye contact is disengaged, our temperature is lowered, and the awareness of the present moment is also lowered. So again, we're separating ourselves from this awareness and from this mindfulness and from being in this present moment. That's one of the ways and one of the reasons why we can bring mindfulness and this awareness of our physical state, of our physical body, being aware of something in the moment, that can help to slowly pull us out of a state of being in this freeze space. We can also use this dorsal vagus nerve, or the dorsal vagus branch of the vagal nerve, to understand how the system is engaged. If we're really feeling a depressed mood or depressed space where we don't engage easily with others, we find that that's really difficult to be with others where normally that would be our norm. It might be that this space of the nervous system is actually overly engaged, and we can again use these different manipulations of tissues or lifestyle activities to try and get us back on track and to help this nerve and this trigger that is going to our brain, the signal, to provide a message of safety, especially when we're not in that state of really life-threatening situations happening right in the moment, because we can carry that trauma with us in everyday life. So we want to start providing this message of safety to the body so that we can start engaging these brain states and start getting back to the social engagement where we're within our window of tolerance. One of the beautiful things Dr. Porges explains reiterates an idea that I've described in previous sessions. In our society, we're expected to be fully responsible for our own behavior. And of course, this is a good thing. It makes sense where we're all functioning adults in the world and whatnot. However, we discount the aspects of the behavior that are actually reflexive, like these ones I just described. We might actually have slightly less control over our behavior than we might think. And we perceive this level of safety. That is what actually then helps us to initiate different controls from our brain and from our nervous system. And so we want to then understand how we can create this message of safety so we can come out of this worry and anxiety state of this hypo-arousal, or we can pull ourselves back from this freezing state, being hypo-aroused. We don't realize how much information is really coming into our system every second of the day. Thousands of pieces of information from our environment, and we're always processing this. And it takes all different brain capacities and so much of this coordination to really make this snap decision about our safety. Our gut feeling, whether something is good or not, actually can be really important in making this vital decision. And we can become more conscious of our senses that take in this information. And when we do that and we start to notice that side of it, when that information comes in, we can almost have more control over these snap decisions. We practice awareness when we make decisions like that, or when we do. We can create more choice in how we perceive and how we then interpret safety. I introduced the idea of body gauges 12 weeks ago, and you're more than welcome to check out week 2, I believe it is, in Mental Fortress Mondays. The more that I explore the experiences and the science and the approaches that other people take that have changed lives, the more evidence I have that supports all of these lessons and the exercises that we're exploring here. And we're going to get into more details about that aspect, the gauges, and how do we actually sense where we are and how do we change that interpretation. We're going to get into some of that next week. And this brings us to our practical application of what can we do about this then, knowing all of this information. How do we create this message of safety in our nervous system, especially when we're stressed, when we're burnt out, and functioning in this danger state, or if we're finding that we're really disengaged and almost more in this freeze state. We're going to go through 3 things. As I described last week, we want to stop fueling a fire if we have one. Something like this burnout or stress, we want to stop adding all of these things that create more of that in our lives. 2, we want to put out the fires that are in our lives right now, help to decrease the level of stress that we currently have. And then 3, we want to help to rejuvenate and rebuild, rest and relax and grow beautiful things and gardens and water plants and whatever analogy you might want to use for that. So the first one is to stop fueling the fire. What puts us in a danger sort of state? Now, this is very subtle, and I challenge you to really take a look at this. It may be surprising to understand that the factors of our lifestyle actually put us in this state of more danger. Last week, we explored how foods that you're actually sensitive to that create a bit of a reaction in your immune system can completely throw you off and actually put you in a state of danger. And today I challenge you to look at the information that you're feeding yourself, the words that you're feeding yourself. Stop feeding yourself information and thoughts that fuel your fire. One of the ways to do this is to attend to what information you're exposing yourself to. This is typically through, at least in today's society and here in Canada, Nova Scotia, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, online things. What shows do you watch? What movies do you watch? And how do they actually serve you? Have you looked at things on social media before and felt just a little worse? Maybe about yourself, just about things in general, about your day, maybe insecure, maybe jealous, just generally worse about yourself after having seen them. And does it serve you to look at this, create this negative attitude, and then essentially go forward with that kind of stickiness lingering up in your body for the rest of the day? It stirs up this negative energy that we end up kind of holding on to, or that start perpetuating our thoughts on this trail of negativity, possibly about ourselves. Typically, that's the case. There's enough negativity in the world for sure that often makes us feel insecure, less worthy, or just this overall kind of blah feeling or space or attitude. And you have the choice, especially in the control that you have over your own social media, to fill your senses with positive things that can only build you up. One of my favorite shows used to be Bones, or any of those crime solving shows. And I really, really loved them, but actually had to stop watching them because of the violence that is in them and how I know that it would make me feel, or how I would sleep, or all of these other little aspects that really then start to build up the level of capacity that I have, that level of stress that I might be feeling. So I challenge you to have a serious look this week. Look at your Instagram feed, look at your Facebook feed, at your Twitter feed, all those other aspects of social media, different apps that you might be using. See what truly serves you, what helps to build you up, what helps you to feel like the power that you ultimately can and should have, and makes you feel really worthy of being in your own skin. And if anything doesn't serve you in that way, get rid of it. Try it for a time. Just stop following those people, write them down somewhere else so you can find them again if you'd like. Try it for 3 weeks and just see how that makes you feel. Second, we want to put out the fires that are there. Do something calming when you're feeling stressed or when you're feeling disengaged in our freeze state. Repetitive tasks can often do this. They can change that dominant hormone in the brain, or these different chemicals that are floating around that really actually help to get us almost back into our body, back into that present moment. Remember when we used to take airplanes? If you've ever experienced this when you're packing, that you want to go and check is that passport in there? Just to be sure, I'm just going to check it for the 13th time. You do know that it's there, but that repetitive action of checking actually helps to calm us down. It's this methodical rhythm of doing something, and that actually helps us also to be in the physical present moment. So figure out what it is for you, and maybe make a list so that you have those things to go to when you're ready to meet, when you need it, when you're a little bit stressed. So it might actually be doing the dishes. It might be folding laundry. It might be sweeping. Often cleaning has this grounding kind of repetitive action that we can engage in. Or it might be pacing. That's a great one. Take your pacing into the forest and go for a walk. Maybe take your socks and shoes off and ground physically at the same time. Just feel that earth underneath your feet. And then third, we want to rejuvenate. The vagus nerve controls the muscles of the throat. These are responsible for swallowing and for singing, for actually even gagging and gargling. So one of the things that we can do to tone the vagus nerve is to sing your heart out. Yell, scream, whatever it is that you want to do. Exercise these muscles in a really loud way. Gargling is a common one that I use for patients as well. It needs to be done with so much vigor. I heard a doctor describe that it needs to be done in a way that if you were to videotape yourself, post it on social media, it would go viral because of how intense that gargling is. It should make your eyes water. And you do this for as long as you can. Practice a couple of those. I would love to see and hear your feedback. Thank you so much for joining this week as we learned all about the Polyvagal Theory and our responses in our states to safety. Next week, we're going to dig into some of those gauges of how we really first sense that environment, how we create this interpretation of safety for us that then in turn controls how we're going to react and behave, or at least the blood flow to the parts of our brain that allow us to do that. I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.